So I want to thank you. This is everybody, guitar nerds. This is, was it Darro?
Darro.
Darro, damn it. Like 5 minutes ago.
I know. It's
We've
so
known
funny.
each other for what, 10 years or more?
Has it been that long?
You were a little punk, not.
Yeah, I still am a little punk, but
yeah. It's like,
man, I was like, that was
I just call you
2010.
D.
Huh?
I should just call you D because
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do.
For 10 years, we've had an ongoing back and forth. So it's been a pleasure watching you grow. And anyway, I want to tell the world your story because it's an inspiring one. And so first off, tell us your name so you get it right.
Yeah, so my name is Darro. I'm an Asian American emo pop punk artist right now, but I have, I studied with you like over a decade ago. Man, that's been so long.
But but then you restudied over me not so long ago.
Yeah.
Probably 7, was it? When did you so you were at Temple?
Yeah.
And then
I was at Temple taking virtual lessons with you, and then I think in 2013
we got you into Berklee.
Yeah, and then I went to Berklee and I was there for a while. And yeah, we kind of reconnect every like couple of years.
Yeah. So every all right, so what are you doing now?
So musically, I don't want to say I'm living the dream, but I am struggling to living the dream. I'm on the road to living the dream of being an artist. So I'm writing and producing my own songs, and I'm just like trying to release music, gain an audience, and actually just released a song last Friday.
Yes.
And it's doing pretty well, I think.
Which will be in the description of this video.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
It'll be tagged.
Yeah, it's called Signing Out. And it's actually about the night that I was in York, Pennsylvania, when I found out that I had a brain tumor. And that's a whole story. That was like 3 days after I finished my master's program at Berklee. I came back to York, and like 3 days later, they found it right in my noggin.
All right.
And it was traumatic.
I believe it.
It was traumatic. So I wrote a song about it, and now it's out.
We're going to talk in the process of this. We're going to talk about your healing process and all that. So how did the music thing all begin for you?
Well, so my family is my dad's pretty musical. I kind of always grew up around music. My dad played in a bunch of like wedding bands, like Cambodian wedding bands. So like, and there's not very many Cambodians in the area. I mean, like if you're in York and you've met a Cambodian, 99% chances are that they're related to me. It's basically one giant family in York.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of extended family like in the surrounding area, like Lancaster and Harrisburg. There's a lot of Cambodians in that area. And so there's only like 2 or 3 bands that play for weddings. Like, I guess you could call it a GB, but it's really just weddings that they play for. And so my dad was for a while like a singer and keyboard player and he would play guitar sometimes. And ever since I was like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years old, they would practice in our basement. Like his whole band would come and practice in our basement every Sunday. And I would remember it was always Sunday because it was band practice and then football. Right. It was always those 2 in that order.
Yeah.
Like they would practice in the morning and then they would watch football for the rest of the day. And so like and it was really loud. So like I wouldn't actually go downstairs into the basement, but I would sit at the top of the stairs and just like listen to them for like 2 hours while they would play. And then this was before I was into football. Like once they were finished and they were upstairs playing football, I would go downstairs and like play on the drums after they're finished, like secretly. And that's kind of like how I got started. I just like would go downstairs and play after they had finished rehearsing. And and I did try to start on the drums. I didn't know what I was doing. Then like after a couple of years of like off and on dabbling with instruments, I finally settled on the guitar. And I was like mostly self-taught for the first couple of years, really bad technique, really full of myself. And because I didn't have any role models or other, because I went to
Yeah.
York City, right? So like I
Yeah.
went to York High and Hennepin. So there's like no other guitar players, right?
Mhm.
Like that was completely absent from both the curriculum
Yeah.
and just from like other students'
You
lives.
didn't have the community. There wasn't the community in the
Yeah. And so like I didn't have any like point of reference, like of like whether or not I was actually like a good player or, you know, so, and I would say it was both helpful and detrimental. Like it was detrimental in the fact that like I was, one, I was arrogant and full of myself, and I definitely wasn't playing properly. But then also it didn't deter me from like trying to play better. You know what I mean? Like it didn't,
Okay.
like it wasn't
Well,
something.
you weren't beaten up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you had enough. You had enough self love, even an exorbitant amount.
Yeah,
It
pretty much.
didn't stop you.
Yeah,
Didn't stop you, which is yeah.
yeah. And then actually, I remember the first time that I ever took a lesson with you, I was like so overwhelmed with the amount that I didn't know that I was like too scared to continue at first.
Okay.
Like I was like, I went into your lesson and you were like, yeah, do you know your scales? I was like, I don't know what the hell a scale is.
Okay.
And I was like, this is not my domain. So I just
Yeah.
like
But
went
it
back
was.
and yeah.
It was.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah. In other
I
words, it
just
was
didn't know it.
something that was. You were on the path towards that kind of playing.
Yeah. So that's when that started. And then, you know, fast forward, I struggled my way through jazz band. Man, it's so hard being in jazz band in high school when you don't know how music theory
Jazz
works.
chords.
Yeah, it was bad. It was so bad. I remember,
Yeah.
dude, I remember being in jazz band, and it was just like slash notation, right? And it was like slash notation is just showing you like basic rhythms.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a note, it was a slash on,
Yeah.
and of course it's on the middle of the staff, so it's on the B. And I was like, am I just supposed to play quarter note B notes the entire time? And I was like, I had no idea that like it was just like, you know, like fast
Freddie
hand
Green
rhythm.
style.
Yeah. And so I was just like, I was sitting there playing just like a B note in probably like the key of like D or something. It's just like completely off, because I didn't know that slashes meant like play like a appropriate rhythm over this thing. And so like that was like my first hiccup. I was like, this doesn't sound right. Like, so that's when I like decided, okay, like I should probably.
Who was your jazz band teacher?
Mr. Cromer.
Okay.
Yeah, Kevin Cromer.
No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if he knew how to play the guitar, but eventually, like he was a tough cookie. Like he was very tough on me, I guess in a good way. Now that I think about it, because he just expected so much out of me, and I guess he did with everyone. But at the time, I was just so intimidated because like everybody else was a band kid and I wasn't. I was just the kid that played the guitar.
Yeah.
And so it was like, and that was also when I started to like realize that I wasn't very good at all. Because when I was in the jazz band, we would play festivals with other high schools, and like they knew how to play. Like they were reading sheet music and they were improvising. And like, I mean, like, yeah, for high schoolers, they're improvising. And I was like, damn, it's like, they must have taken lessons. And I was like, I should probably start to do that, huh? But it wasn't until I finished high school that I really started getting serious about the guitar.
Did you take any time off? Like in between high school and Temple? Okay.
First I went to Temple, but I was undeclared because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought that I was going to be a computer scientist. Was not a computer scientist. I failed pre-calc twice in college.
All right.
And mostly because I was skipping class to practice. So, yeah, so I went to Temple, and it just like, it was honestly, it was the summer right before my first year of college. It all clicked when I went to go see Steve Vai in a master class at the Whitaker Center.
I was there.
You were there. I think I remember seeing you there.
Yeah.
And I was like, at first I was really upset because he like didn't do any talking about the guitar.
And I loved it. The fact that
I know.
I don't want to learn sweep picking from Steve Vai.
I was a kid and I was I want to learn how to do those legato licks and all that stuff. And like he played 2 songs and just talked about like his mentality and all that stuff.
Yeah. It was Law of Attraction.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like,
which I never knew about before.
yeah.
I
I was a kid, didn't understand it. I was just like, man, I just want to get better at guitar. Like, why is he teaching me how to play guitar? And, but just like seeing him in person was the
how he
catalyst.
thinks
Yeah,
is more powerful than how he sweeps.
absolutely. Because you can find that anywhere.
Yeah.
But that was a catalyst that like really got me. I was like, okay, if I'm going to be a guitar player, like I'm going to practice. Right. So then I went to Temple and immediately just like, okay, like I still wasn't taking lessons, but I was like, okay, like I'm gonna get serious and like try to like relearn how to play. And so like I would pick songs that were way above my technique level and just like start learning them note by note. And so I really just started, that was actually when I started like training my ear inadvertently. I didn't realize it. Because one, I didn't know how to read sheet music. And two, I hardly ever looked at tabs. I thought tabs were really overwhelming to look at because it's just a bunch of lines and numbers. And I was just like, this is just too much. So I actually just started learning by ear inadvertently. And so I started learning Steve Vai songs. I think the first song that I learned it was probably Bad Horsey. And it was a hard song because there's just a lot of chords in the beginning. And then it started getting into like more technically challenging songs like Tender Surrender. And man, I spent like 4 years learning that song and I still can't completely get it. And I haven't played it in a long time either, but I would practice. So I would practice like for that first year of college, I practiced like 4 or 5 hours like a day. Right. And in hindsight, that's not much compared to like what I started doing
later. Did you graduate from Temple?
No, I transferred. So okay. Part of this entire like first 2 years at Temple was me realizing that I was not where I wanted to be. And then also figuring out what I needed to do to get to where I wanted to be. And I will never forget, like, I had such a bad habit of physically putting my own chips on my own shoulders and like making myself work harder because like I felt like I didn't deserve the things that I had. And it was like such
the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, it's the imposter syndrome over and over again. And like when I first got to Temple and I realized that they had a music program and they had like kids like walking around with guitars on their back. And this was like a distinct thing. I remember like seeing like these kids, like these jazz majors walking around with their guitars on their backs. And like, they were so freaking cool, dude. They were so badass to me. I was like, man, like they go to school for guitar. And I was like, that would be so fucking awesome. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, all right, I made this stupid rule for myself that I wasn't allowed to carry my guitar around on campus unless I was a music major, right? And so like I got like super into it and like I started taking lessons secretly and then I started taking lessons with you. Mm-hmm. And then I decided, okay, like I'm gonna audition for the music school here at Temple. And that was my main thing. Like that's what I wanted to do originally because like Berklee was still a far away dream for me. It was still like, that's unachievable, right? Because I thought it was really hard to get in. Mm-hmm. And so I practiced a lot and I started like diving really deep into theory. I started diving really deep into technique and phrasing. And then it got to the point where I was practicing like 7 or 8 hours a day for like 4 hours of jazz, 4 hours of technique, like for at least 2 years before I auditioned. And so then I auditioned for Temple, which was nerve-wracking. And after it took like 2 weeks for them to get back to me and I had gotten in and I was like, holy shit, like I have like a thing. Like I immediately went and bought a guitar case so I could start carrying my guitar around campus because like, I was like, I did it. Like I'm good enough to like carry, like I'm allowed to like, yeah. So then I did that. And fun fact, it was a reunion blues case. Cause like, that's what all the kids were wearing at the time, a reunion blues, which I am now endorsed by, which is pretty full circle. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. And then, so like I got into Temple's jazz program before I ever auditioned to Berklee. So like when I went, so for jazz or for the jazz audition at Boyer at Temple, it was like, you know, I had to play like 2 or 3 jazz standards and improvise over a couple of solos. And then I had a comp, you know, like a pretty standard jazz audition.
Bossa.
Oh yeah, Blue Bossa. I think I played Hey Joe, and I can't remember what the third one was. Blue Bossa, man, it was such a good tune too. Um, and in hindsight, it was pretty nerve wracking, but it actually wasn't that, like, it was pretty simple. But for me, like, this was like my first year diving into theory and jazz theory. So like everything was just like uncharted territory. But then the Berklee audition was very different. That was like, they wanted to see everything, like your improvising as well as your sight reading, as well as like how technically well you can play and all that stuff. So that was when I auditioned Tender Surrender for Steve Vai. And I had worked so hard on that song. And I also, like, I wasn't that nervous because I had already gotten into Temple. So I was like, I already know, like I'll be fine no matter what happens. But man, I went into that Berklee audition and I nailed it. And I knew immediately after I finished that audition, I was like, I got in. And it was crazy because like I had been working so hard with ear training and theory and stuff that when they were auditioning me, like asking me like, okay, what like interval did I just play? Like, what, can you sing this back to me? Like, can you like repeat this rhythm? And I was like, this is stuff I've been doing with Rod for like the last year and a half, you know? And I was like, and it wasn't like, it was just like, I just realized that I had been so prepared. And I had put in this school on such a pedestal that I realized that it technically isn't that hard. If you really want it, like, you'll be fine, you know?
Well, that's the Steve Vai thing.
Yeah. It's just like
Put yourself in a situation.
Exactly.
That law of attraction, that once you've committed yourself to it,
you'll do anything to make it happen.
Yeah. And it's not even a long shot. It's right there. It's right. It's grabbable.
Yeah. So I finished that audition feeling really good about it. And then 2 weeks later, I got the acceptance letter and I was like, I'm moving to Boston. Like, I'm sorry, everyone that I've known for my entire life. I'm like leaving this area. And then I moved to Boston, and that was great and scary and terrifying because, man, there are so many good players at Berklee.
I don't know how many there were when you were there.
I think when I was there, the entire school was like a little bit less than 3,000 kids, which is a lot it's like the biggest music school. I think it's exploded since then. It's way more than that. Like, when I was there was no master's program at all. There was nothing. It was just Boston. And
when I was there, it was 700 guitar students.
There was a lot of guitar students when I was there. There's over 1,000 for sure.
Yeah. Which is funny how 1/3 of the school is guitar players.
Yeah. I mean, there isn't really it's like there isn't a school for like modern guitar besides like the one in California, Musicians Institute. Yeah. But Berklee is just so much more, prestigious and renowned. So like everyone's going to go there. And obviously you've had like alumni like Steve Vai and Petrucci and all that stuff. So of course, like every guitar player that's not a jazz or classical player is going to want to go to Berklee because of just who has like emerged from that school. Yeah. And then obviously new modern players that look after John Mayer and like, even though he was only there for a semester, and I have stories, I've heard many stories about his time there.
I didn't know it was only a semester.
He was there for like a semester and a half. And I took like a class, I took a blues soloing class with, I don't remember his name, but a professor who also was one of John Mayer's teachers. And he told me the story that I'll never forget.
Is he the, who's his name? Yeah, I know. I remember.
I can't remember.
Yeah. Huh? I remember. I followed him on YouTube. He's got a YouTube channel.
So I remember being in the class with him, and he was like, and everybody knew that he was like, I had no idea that he was like one of John Mayer's teachers. But everyone was like asking about it. I was like, oh, this guy was like one of John Mayer's teachers. And one of the funniest things he said was like, he was a terrible student. Like he was a good player, terrible student. And he was like, I remember for one of the finals, we had to transcribe an Albert King solo, right? And he was like, this is a final assignment that I give to every student for years. And John comes into the class and we do a one-on-one performance. Like, he plays it for me one-on-one, and he comes in without his guitar. And he sits down and I'm like, John, where's your guitar? And he's like, I can't play the solo, man. And the teacher is just like, why not? And he quotes, John was like, man, when Albert played those songs and he played those notes, he played them and they're just gone. And that's literally what he said. And he failed the class, but like he couldn't help but laugh as he like got up and left. And he's like, well, you got an F, but that was hilarious. And I was just like, that's just the funniest story.
It's kind of funny, like some of the music student thing that your pride gets in the way of things.
Yeah.
And it's like the purpose of the purpose of the teacher is not to make him a carbon copy of Albert King. It's to you know,
just teach him the vocabulary.
I've seen that happen again and again and again.
Yeah.
Where you just don't know. All right.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's
everybody has their own journey. I can't push you. You don't have to listen to me. You don't. Well, maybe the wisest thing you do is not to listen to me.
Only with a purpose. Like it's one thing to be stubborn and be like, no, I know better. But it's another thing to be like, I'm not going to listen to you because there's something else that I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's what he was thinking when that happened. But he's fine. He's
done all right for himself.
He's been a very successful guitar player. So
who sounds a lot like Albert King.
He sounds a lot like Albert King for sure.
Yeah, so he's vibing Albert. He's vibing all the blues guys.
Yeah.
Albert King was one of Stevie Ray Vaughan's main influences.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it's funny that he'd have an attitude about that, because it's like one of the things that I teach is, who are your heroes?
Mm-hmm.
And that was certainly one of like a principal one for Steve
yeah.
And I think probably in college, he was just a Stevie Ray clone. Like John Mayer was probably a Stevie Ray clone.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, that was his main influence.
Yeah.
So who did you study with at Berklee?
Private instruction.
Yeah.
So my first semester, I took lessons with, like, he's kind of a funk player, and he played lefty too. His name was Jeff Lockhart.
Okay.
Yeah, super tight player. He's got a way with that picking hand. And he was so chill. He was like one of the most chill teachers. I had him for 2 semesters, and then I took lessons with Joe Stump, who is one of the fastest, probably the fastest person I've ever seen in my life.
He's like a Gary Moore clone.
Yeah.
He was
like Michelangelo Maceo. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And let me tell you, when you do not take the word obsession lightly around that guy, because there is not a single second of silence around him. He's physically always playing the guitar.
Yeah.
Like even during lessons, like in between lessons, he's playing. Like in between words, he's playing. Yeah. And he's playing fast, and he probably like plays like 1 million notes a week, I swear. Yeah. It's insane. His stamina, his speed, and his like cleanliness is just.
He was in the scene when I was there.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think he went to school there.
He did. He went to school there.
Like I'm saying in 89 is when I left, and I remember he was playing in bands with members. But I don't think he at that point went to school there yet. He was he's still scary. Berklee did not have any shreddy rock teachers.
No.
In 89. It was all jazz.
Yeah. He's a staple to them, because I don't think there's not a single teacher that can play that fast. Mm-hmm. And so I took a lot of lessons with him, partially because I wanted to get faster, and this guy pushed me. He pushed me very hard. And I also liked him because like he was pretty down to earth in terms of like which scales are useful. In terms, because like Berklee likes to throw everything at you, and like you have to master all of these scales. And I'm like, when am I ever going to use this scale, like the Phrygian dominant scale? Like when am I ever going to use that? You know what I mean?
Which I do use.
which of course you do.
Yeah.
And it's all, of course, it's all like a matter of taste and like style.
Yeah.
But like, he's like, this is how you play it. I don't ever use it, but this is how you play it.
Yeah.
And so like, he showed it to me and like, he's like, okay, now play it fast. And so like, you know, there was a lot of technique with him. And I studied with him for a few years, or maybe like 3 or 4 semesters. And then I took lessons with John Finn. And John Finn, man, he is probably the best all-around player like that I studied with there. He has like a very fusion-esque style. And obviously he's played with a lot of big people. He's played with Guthrie, he's played with John Petrucci, you know, he's been on stage with like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani and stuff like that. So and of course, he plays for the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Yeah. And he is probably one of the best sight readers there.
Really?
Yeah, he's an extraordinary.
Well, I guess so. He's playing with the orchestra.
Yeah, I mean, like, I remember when I was auditioning for musicals, like in the area, like I would audition for to be in the pit, and I would like bring in a score for him, and he would just look at it and he's like, oh yeah, and just play through it, just like notation, no chord symbols, just play straight through it. And he's like, oh no, this is like, and I'm just like, bro, what? And he would just breeze through these like musical scores. And he was really good at that, but he was also really good at just like improvisation and like fusion improv. Like he did a lot of modal improv, a lot of modal interchange improv. He did a lot of Lydian flat 7 improv. And like, not only did I take classes with him with private instruction, but I also took a lot of like supplementary classes too, like labs and stuff. And we were I think we did a rock improv class, and he made us solo over a lot of like, you know, Jeff Beck, a lot of Satriani, you know, and like, it was like every single week we had it transcribed like a 16-bar solo, write it down, bring it in, play it. And then the entire class would have to improv over the instrumental part of that solo. Yeah. And stuff like that. And so he was like just all around phenomenal player. And so I learned a lot from him too. And I still talk to him a lot.
Which teacher was the most organized?
Organized. I would say guitar teachers aren't very organized in general. It's not, I think it's just like the nature of a guitar player. Man, organized. I would say, okay, so the most organized teacher that I had wasn't a private instructor that I had, but it was a teacher that I had for a lab. Actually, 2. There were 2 teachers that I had for labs. One, I can't remember, honestly, I can't remember any of their names. But one was this guy, and he was the professor for my Brazilian guitar ensemble. Okay. And he was super prepared. Like he would share the charts with us at least a week and a half before we would like have to go in and play it. And and the thing is, like, it was a Brazilian ensemble class, so everyone was playing. There was like 6 kids playing one song, and of course he had to take this song and arrange it so that 6 people could play it and it wouldn't just sound like mud, you know? Yeah. So he did a really good job of like splitting up the parts between 6 different players and sending each player their designated part. Yeah. So he was really good at that, and he was always on time. So he was very, very organized. And then another teacher that I had, I can't remember her name either. I think she might be, no, it wasn't Kim. I don't think she's the chair. But she was the professor for my sight reading lab. And I guess like, I mean, I guess how prepared do you really have to
Lauren?
be? Huh?
Did you know Lauren?
Lauren, what's her name?
She Berklee teacher.
I might remember if I saw her face.
She's like a Beatle.
Maybe that might be her.
Pazzarelli?
Yes, that sounds very familiar.
Okay.
Yeah, I think she taught my sight reading class. And I don't really know how prepared you have to be a sight reading lab instructor. You just show up and give them the charts and be like, read this. Okay. Because there isn't much to do to prepare besides just read a lot. Yeah. because obviously they're not going to give you the charts before the class, because then that would defeat the purpose of sight reading. But yeah, she was also very organized, from what I remember. I'm
Yeah.
like pulling all of these memories from like the recesses
Yeah.
of my mind.
Well, she was there when I was there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
As a student?
No, she was a couple years out.
Oh, okay.
She was a couple years out. Like she probably graduated in like 84, something like that. So
Yeah,
what you're saying is the teaching style of Berklee teachers were typically nonlinear.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Every teacher is different. So different. And
Yeah.
like you never know what to expect.
We all have our personalities.
Yeah.
We all have things that we nobody can be like all the things that they throw at you.
Yeah.
We're not something that in other words, what you saying to Joe Stump, it's like this Phrygian dominant scale. Here it is. Here's how you finger it. I never use it.
Yeah. No, yeah. And that's the thing, like when you go to that school, like obviously in your first semester, you're not really going to know what to do or what, unless you do like serious research, which I didn't do. But you should eventually get to a point where you should know what teacher is good for like what forte they have and why. Like you have to have a reason for picking a specific teacher. Like you shouldn't just go there and just pick a random teacher because you don't know what else to do. Yeah. Like you're squandering your time.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
So you graduated with a performance major.
Technically, I had a double. So I did performance and music production and engineering.
You're insane.
Yeah. It was bad, dude. I have no friends.
Yeah.
I had no friends because the performance degree is a lot. It's a lot of work. It's like you have to go, you're in like 2 ensembles, private instruction, 2 labs. That's a full schedule. Like that's 15 credits already. Like just performance, all playing.
Yeah.
Not to mention you have to play for other ensembles and you have to do arranging classes for other people. And then you have to do, I forget what they call it, but it's like your recital prep. And you have to like, start picking songs for your recital from a very early stage. And that was a full stacked schedule. And then the music production engineering program was also a full schedule because you had to learn how to be an engineer. You had to learn how to mix. You had to learn audio technology. You had to learn digital technology. And then you have to not only produce your own records, but you have to serve as an engineer for other people's projects because that's also a part of your grade. And then you have to one of the big projects is you have to produce a band. You have to like find Berklee students, produce them from demo.
That is probably, in my opinion, one of the best places in the world to learn that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Because 1,000%. You have so much access. Not only do you have access to all this equipment and know-how, but you also have access to musicians that you can, it's all kinds.
It's literally a factory. It's like quite literally a factory of like production engine. And not to mention you have like teachers in the music production program are literally the teachers that pioneered the record industry. Like they're the ones that created the techniques that people are still using today.
Yeah.
And a lot of my professors, I didn't realize at the time, but most of them have some sort of Grammy or something for a project that they worked on that you don't find out and they don't ever talk about it.
Yeah.
One of my first MP&E teachers recorded Creep. One of my other professors has a Grammy for mixing Outkast. Another professor has a Grammy for working with Prince Charles Alexander has multiple Grammys for working with Biggie Smalls and Dr. Dre, et cetera, et cetera. And then Susan Rogers, who is one of the smartest producers of all time, worked on Purple Rain. Just all of them are just like top-notch producers and engineers. And these are the people teaching you how to like look at a record and produce it. And not only like the technical like mixing and like numbers and audio stuff, but then also like from a grand big picture, like why would you like how to figure out which sound to use, like what effect do you use on this guitar? How does it match with the atmosphere of the song? How does this specific note match with this specific lyric of the song? you know?
Yes.
And then all of that combined with like the counterpoint that you learn and the arrangement classes that you take, it's like, it's all like encompassing if you choose to learn it.
Yes.
You have to like really want to learn it. You can't just like be passive at Berklee. It's really, and that's one of the things that whenever like I talk to a student or a kid who wants to go to Berklee, it's like, you have to give them a huge disclaimer, because I honestly, I mean, it might be different today, but when I was there and in earlier years, it's not one of the schools where you can just get your average college experience. Like if you want to like, you know, kind of like live a ordinary college life, you know, like live in a dorm and like, you know, go to a few parties and like, you know, like live on your own, don't go to Berklee.
Yeah.
Go to Temple, go to like,
Yeah.
you know, York, you know, but if you want to go to Berklee, you have to like, you have
That's
to be
it's a career.
Yeah.
It's a career place.
Yeah. It's like you have to be
those who went there, if you left there and went to other colleges, that would be like the girlfriend that got away. You know what I mean? That's the one that you're completely going back to. Like this is how you're judging everything.
Yeah. And
I went to York College, I went to Millersville, but the best school in the world for me was Berklee.
Yeah.
For my way of being, my way of, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not an average, it's like, it's not a school that you can just like,
so you go to York College, you go to York College and they were like 40 years behind the times.
Yeah. You could go there and you could skid by. Like it's possible to graduate from Berklee and like be like an ordinary, like, yeah, like I went through and I did my credits and I went to my classes and stuff. But like, why did you do that? Like, why would you go to Berklee and not pour every single ounce of energy you had into learning everything you possibly could? Because it's not a school where you should just squander away all the opportunities that you have there, because you'll never have that experience again.
Yeah.
Like, you'll never be able to have such access to all those resources.
Prince's engineer.
Yeah. Like that's just one of hundreds of faculty members that have done something incredible throughout their lives.
Yeah.
And if you're not spending your energy seeking out their like mentorship or like, you know what I mean? Then like, why are you there? You know, it's pretty cutthroat, like the way that I look at it, but it's an expensive school. It's expensive. It's hard to get into. And it's like, there's so many kids that are competing for like the attention.
Yeah.
Like, obviously it's the school, it's like, it's still a learning environment, but that school is the most competitive school I've ever like experienced.
Yeah.
It's like,
they get them all over the world.
Yeah. And every single student there was the best kid in their town. So imagine you spent your whole life being the best guitar player in your high school, the best guitar player in your town, right? And you get there and every single person is the exact same best person in their town. And you're like, holy shit, this guy can shred. There was a guy in my first ensemble ever was a progressive rock ensemble, right? We played a lot of Rush, we played a lot of Porcupine Tree, we played Dream Theater, and our keyboard player, it was like his maybe second or third semester there. He was there on a full ride. And there was like this article that was kind of like surfacing around the students. And it was about this kid from Turkey who was a composer on the latest Dream Theater record. This was like the 2016 self-titled Dream Theater record where it had Mike Mancini on it for the first time. And this kid was like flown to New York to help them compose this record, right? And like was really good friends with Jordan Rudess. And like we were all talking about it in our class because we're a progressive rock ensemble. And the kid, our keyboard player, turns around and was like, "That's me." And I was like, "Dude, get out. I was like, "Get out." It was like my first experience ever was talking to a kid who had credits for composing and was really good friends and still is really good friends with Jordan Rudess. I'm just like, and ever since I met him and for the next couple of years, every time I would see him, Jordan Rudess was near him. Jordan was always on campus with this kid and they would rehearse together and they would just like be playing keyboard together. He was at his senior recital. I was like, what is going on here? You know?
Yeah. Like they're related or something.
Yeah, no, but like they were just.
So what did you get your master's in?
Huh?
What did you get your master's in?
So after I graduated, So after I graduated with my double, like my music production and my performance degree, I felt like I wasn't good enough, right? So I was like, well, let me go get my imposter syndrome. I was like, let me go get my performance degree, master's. So at this point, they had just launched their master's program in Spain, and I was like, oh, it would be pretty nice to like be out of the country and like kind of experience this new world. So I went to get it's called contemporary performance. And so I got my master's degree in contemporary guitar performance at Berklee in Valencia, Spain.
All right.
And that was like a year and a half program there. It was like a pretty intense program. And it was fun. Man, I miss Spain. Spain is awesome. I think it's a lot like California, but just really, really laid back.
So you graduated from your master's, and a couple of days later you go back to York. You're back in York, Pennsylvania, and then what happens?
So the last week or so of my master's program, like we played a commencement concert. Like every student like participates in the commencement concert, and it was a big concert. It was like one of those like giant like stadium type deals, and we played that. And I just remember during that last week I was having like peripheral vision problems. Like everything was kind of blurry on the edges of my vision. And I thought at first it was my contact lens. Like, so I was like, would constantly take out my contacts and clean them and put them back in, but it didn't change anything. And I was like, oh, maybe it's like some sort of infection. Like I thought it was an eye infection. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be back in the United States in like a week. So I'm going to go see my eye doctor to get a new prescription and then ask him about this like weird eye issue. So then I get home. I think we get home on a Friday night. My appointment is on Monday morning at like 11 a.m. And so I go in. The first thing I do, I wake up and I go to my appointment. And I was like, I'll get food and stuff afterward. And I go in and I tell them about the situation, and they do this peripheral vision test. And they come out and they tell me that there's like a physical pressure on my optic nerves. And that's not caused by an eye infection, but there's like something physical there. So then they're like kind of freaking out, and they're telling me that I have to go to the emergency room. And so I go to the emergency room, and they're like, you just have to like get an MRI immediately. And I didn't even have insurance yet. I was still I was just in the US. Like I had Spanish insurance, and like obviously I hadn't worked here in over a year or 2 years. So I still had zero insurance. So while I'm waiting in the ER, I was applying for Obamacare, which saved my life, by the way. So I remember waiting, and I actually saw Jeff Stabley there. I was in the ER, and I was like, and he comes up to me, he was like, Darro. I was like, Jeff? And I forget why he was there, but like, it was the first person that I saw in York. Like before I even saw my friends, I saw Jeff, like the first person that I knew outside of my family was Jeff Stabley, and I saw him there. And so I was waiting. It took me like 8 hours to get in to see an MRI. It was such a long wait, and I hadn't eaten anything yet. So I get in to the MRI, and I tell them everything that's wrong with me. And they ask me all these questions that have nothing to do with my eyes, right? And they're like asking me about like my have I like had any weight gain? Like have I had any weird joint issues or like bone growth? And I was like, yes, but that has nothing to do with my eyes. So then they're like, we think it might be something else. So then they obviously do a bunch of blood tests, and then they give me an MRI, and then they see a tumor. There's like 4 centimeters in my, like the base of my brain. And it's so big that it's physically pushing on my optic nerves, which was causing all the vision problems. It was basically the size of a golf ball. And it was like, I was like, shit. Like I was not ready for that, because there was 2 reasons. One, I had been experiencing a lot of weird health issues like over the last like 6 or 7 years. Like obviously I look very different than I did like 10 years ago. And it's not because 10 years later, it's because like the tumor was causing so much hormonal change in my body that like it was causing, I had really high amounts of growth hormone, which was causing my body to grow in places that like I shouldn't have. Like I grew like 4 extra inches since I finished puberty. And as cool as that sounds, it's really, really, really bad for your knees
Yeah.
because your platelets have fused. Because after you finish puberty, you're like, okay, like I'm done. I'm good. I'm locked in. And then I keep growing and it's just like stretching all this stuff out, and it was weakening everything. And I actually ended up tearing my MCL in 2016 playing tennis, which I used to play tennis all the time. And it was like, but like just my joints had been so deteriorated after however many years of having a tumor. Even though I didn't know it at the time, I tore my MCL super easily. And I actually played my senior recital on crutches because of that, because that was like 2 weeks before my senior recital.
Yeah.
So that sucked. And then like a year and a half later, I had jaw surgery because like I had started growing an underbite because of the high levels of growth hormone. It was actually like affecting my bone growth in my jaw.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was physically unable to eat. Like it was like my teeth weren't touching in most places. So like I couldn't really like bite into things. So then I had to get jaw surgery, and I got all these surgeries before I even knew that I had a brain tumor. So like I was treating all the symptoms, but I didn't know what was
You
the
weren't
cause.
treating the cause.
Yeah, and I didn't even know there was a cause. I didn't know any of the stuff was related.
Mm-hmm.
So then when I found out that I had a tumor, and like I had these like crazy hormone imbalances that were affecting my body to this point, I was like, well, that explains a lot. But then I also was like freaking out because I thought I was gonna die, and it was really traumatic because I had basically just spent, I don't know, like 13, 14 years studying music, and I hadn't released any music at all. Like for the last year, I was like, okay, and the reason why I went to get my master's degree, besides the imposter syndrome, was like, I want to focus on myself as an artist. Like I want to like actually start to write music now, which is why I decided to go get my master's. Because like this is just for me. This is not to be a guitar player. This is not to like play for other people or be a virtuoso. It's like this is for me to figure out who I am as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went there and did that. And then when I finished the program, I was like, I had these songs written and produced, and I was ready to like find a band and start like playing shows and stuff. And I found out that I had a brain tumor. And I was like, what? Like, I hadn't even released it. I hadn't even played a show yet. And I was like, I thought I was going to die.
How long was the recovery?
So after they found the tumor, I got surgery a couple of months later. I think I got surgery in September, and they found the tumor in July. So it took them 2 months to get me an appointment, and they didn't do it in York. They actually made me go to Pittsburgh because they had a specialist there. So I went to Pittsburgh for it, and the kicker was I had an internship in New York, like starting in August, like starting in the fall, following my master's program, and I actually already like paid for an apartment, and I was already on a lease for an apartment while I was getting surgery. Like I was in the middle of my first month of my lease while I was in the operating room. So, and obviously I signed the lease, so I couldn't like get out of it at that point. And so like I had to tell my internship that like, can we just like push this off for a couple of months because I had to get brain surgery? And they were like, oh no, that's fine. Like just please survive. And so, so like I was like, okay, cool, I'll try. And so like the surgery was in September, and they told me that I was supposed to chill for like 6 months, right? Like it wasn't like, it didn't hurt, obviously. Like I didn't feel any pain. I was just tired. I was so tired for weeks. I remember like after I came home, I was in the hospital for like 3 or 4 days after the surgery. They let me come home. And when I got home, I fell asleep on the couch for like 2 days. And it took me probably like a week until I was able to walk from one side of the living room to the other, like without like losing energy. So it was in the beginning was very slow. Like I had zero energy. I couldn't keep my eyes open for more than a couple of minutes at a time. But I needed to get to New York because I wanted to like start doing stuff. And like eventually, like after 2 months, I had gotten to the point where I could walk enough. And I was like, screw this. Like I basically I stopped 3 months early from resting to move here. Which was probably a bad idea because it's like one of the most intense cities in the world. So, and I wasn't fully healed. Like I still had a shit ton of hormonal problems because like, even after the surgery.
Where are you at now?
I'm in Brooklyn.
No, meaning where are you at in your health?
Oh, so It took maybe a year or so before I was able to finally find the correct balance of medication for my hormones. So when I first came to New York, I still wasn't medicated. Like I was just out of the surgery, but I didn't know what medicine that I needed because I didn't know that my hormones were still messed up. I thought that the surgery fixed everything, which is very much not the case. It removed the tumor, but the damage itself to the pituitary gland, which is like what produces my hormones, that damage was done. So I still had like zero cortisol, zero testosterone, zero, like I still had really high levels of growth hormone. And I didn't know any of this. I just came here and like started wrecking my body. I was like, why don't I feel good? So then I went through like 3 different doctors here in New York until I found the right one. And they gave me the proper dosage of medication so like at this point, my hormones are balanced only if I take my medication, and it's going to be like that forever. So like I have to take, I think I take an injection, like I have to inject myself with a needle every 11 days. And then I have to go into the office, the doctor's office, for a special injection every 28 days. And then I have like 3 medications that I take every single day too. So it's like a lot, and it's annoying. And that's also part of the reason why I have to maintain like a normal 9-to-5 job, because otherwise I wouldn't have health insurance.
Yeah.
Which sucks because like
So you are working, state again what you're doing now.
So I work at the New York Public Library, and I am building them a recording studio because that's the music production half of my degree, I guess, being put to use, which is nice. It's a nice gig because like no matter what I do, I'm surrounded by music. So that's really nice. And the benefits are nice, and it's a nonprofit, which helps because the last thing I want to do is be a part of the capitalist cog machine.
Yeah.
Right. So that's nice, and like it's a really nice.
Okay, so now your latest single is "Signing Out."
Yeah,
that has its roots in all this, in the trauma that you had to overcome. Tell us a little bit about that, really quick.
So that song I wrote maybe a year and a half ago, and I was originally going to put it on my last album, Songs to Recovery, but it sounded a little bit too different to fit on that album, and I thought it was a really good song, and it was honestly, the song was too good for my own production. I didn't think I was a good enough producer to produce it. So I actually went to a new producer, and his name is Chris Crummett, and he's a pretty big producer in like the post-hardcore and alternative scene. So like he's produced a bunch of bands, like, I don't know if you ever heard of them, but they're Dance Gavin Dance is one of them, Sleeping with Sirens, like Hail the Sun, Crown the Empire. So he's done all of these bands.
That you admire.
Yeah. And so I went to him, and I was lucky enough that he responded, and 2, he said yes. Because when I actually went to him, like Tyler and I, my bass player, we flew to Portland to go work on this and a couple of other songs. And I asked him, I was like, how many new clients do you take a year? And he's like, you're the only one I took, the only new person that I took. He's like, I always take my returning clients, but you're the only person that I said yes to that wasn't an existing client. And I was like, oh, thank you. That was pretty validating. But so that just came out last Friday, and it's doing pretty well, I think. We have a music video coming out for it in we actually have a lyric video next week, and it's really good. A really good lyric video coming out.
So what we will have, this will be a YouTube, on YouTube. What I will do is I will put all the description links.
Okay.
That, to point our viewers to your videos and all that kind of stuff. So
sounds good. I'll send it to you.
This is so what's after this?
So after this song, the lyric video, the next music video for this song, a playthrough video. I'm doing an Instagram takeover next Friday, actually, for Fender, which is nice.
Okay, so you're a Fender endorser.
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to get like an endorsement deal with them. It's not really an endorsement deal because they don't really do traditional endorsements, but they call it Fender Artist Program. So I'm a part of that Fender Artist Program. And ever since then, I've just been buying guitars like a madman, and I didn't get stopped. I have like 9 Fender guitars right now. It's too much. And so yes, Fender, I'm also with Seymour Duncan. I'm also with GHS Strings. and I'm also with Reunion Blues.
Okay.
So those are the companies that I use right now. It's pretty cool. I think so. So next Friday, like I said, I'm going to be taking over their Instagram, over their stories for Fender. I'm going to be
Okay.
posting a bunch of like day-to-day stuff there.
Okay.
And then after that, I have another song coming out probably in July, and then another lyric video and music video, and then another one in August. I have music coming out until the end of the year.
Okay.
Sure.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So we will come back to you,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's like for brief stuff, but to introduce new stuff. When you have new stuff come out, we'll have another discussion
Sounds good.
about yours. Thank you. Thank you,
All right.
D.
Thanks, Rod.
Alrighty, and it's been a joy, and this is a, yeah, this is, we're glad to have you with us. Seriously,
Dude, thank you for having me. It's
all
been
that,
really fun.
all the stuff that could have gone wrong that didn't. I for
Not
one,
yet.
grateful. Yeah, it did.
We're still
Yes.
kicking.
Yep. Yep. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Rod.
Alrighty, see you then.